Hello, everyone. Brooke, thank you so much for inviting me and organizing our discussion. My name is Kevin Connor. I'm the Director of Communications for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I'm here today to talk to you about conservation messaging and the journey that the Monterey Bay Aquarium has taken over the last several decades, to show you some of the lessons that we have learned along the way and how that has helped to inform our current principles of communication. Let's get started. Our founders, who were from the marine science world, knew that if they could show visitors the wonders of Monterey Bay, they could forge a connection that would inspire people to care about the ocean. And that's our mission, to inspire conservation of the ocean. And when we are open, you can see this happen in real time, and it is wonderful. While we work to inspire visitors on the floor, behind the scenes, our team of conservationists, scientists, policy experts, and educators are leading on the water conservation work, publishing new science, influencing policy, and building the next generation of ocean advocates. Even with all that work, historically, there was a conservation messaging gap in our communications. Typically, outside of the aquarium, we adopted a common message among many aquariums and zoos that we're great, there's cool stuff to see, come visit. And we were really good communicating as one of the most successful aquariums in the world. But we recognized the gap in how we talked about conservation at the aquarium and how we communicated that to the outside world. In the early days, the messaging was more about the wonder of marine life and less about the need to protect the ocean, because it didn't seem as urgent in the early 1980s. As we continued to witness the decline in ocean health around the world, we decided that we had to prioritize conservation in our messages. And several things helped to speed up that pivot to prioritize conservation messaging. The first, I just alluded to, it's more clear than ever that human actions are hurting ocean health. Our job has to be to inspire, educate, and advocate for change. Another factor was that we expanded our audience beyond the 2 million people that visit annually to include 3.5 million followers across our social media. And finally, consumers want to put their money behind experiences that are doing something good for people and the world, not just for sheer entertainment. We learned through market research that we've done so much to inspire our visitors over the years that our audiences place a huge amount of trust in Monterey Bay Aquarium to be a reliable source of information and to protect and conserve the ocean. They see conservation as part of our brand, and our conservation messages resonate with them. The aquarium's most famous experience in conservation messaging has been the Seafood Watch program. This began as an unintended outgrowth of a special exhibition in 1997 called Fishing for Solutions, which tapped into public hunger to know more about the environmental impact that individual seafood choices make at a time when sustainable seafood was just emerging as a conservation concern. Initially, our visitors felt that the exhibit presented more problems than solutions, but then we realized they were walking away with the tent cards placed at the tables in our cafe, which described the steps we had taken to remove unsustainable seafood from our menu. Visitors also reached out to floor staff, and they wrote us letters asking if we could suggest environmentally responsible options to guide their seafood purchases when they went home. 20 years in, and Seafood Watch still raises public awareness about sustainable seafood, connects with chefs and culinary influencers to build that demand, advocates for policy measures to strengthen fisheries management and improve practices, and partners with fishermen, farmers, and governments and other organizations to help transform industry practices. With the proven success of a special exhibit like Fishing for Solutions, the aquarium tackled the issue of climate change in a similar way with a 2010 exhibit called Hot Pink Flamingos. Our goal was to connect the public's love for marine life with the impacts of climate change on ocean ecosystems and animals to highlight concrete steps where people were making a difference. As with all of our exhibitions, compelling live animals were the focus. This included flamingos, penguins, a coral reef and coral reef fish, jellies, sea turtles, a lot of the usual suspects here. Each live exhibit was paired with interpretive elements describing ways people were responding to the climate crisis with creative solutions. Now, if you look closely at this slide, you will in fact see this is not a pink flamingo, but is actually a cow and a gas mask, which we use to illustrate the emissions impact of agriculture. This also drew the ire of the beef industry at the time. As you might imagine, the response from guests 10 years ago was quite polarizing. Some folks called it propaganda, other folks called it an inspiring call to action. What did we learn? We came away from that exhibit with some valuable lessons. We need to approach conservation issues through the lens of shared values to establish common ground and help our audience be more receptive to new information. People become wary of constant doom and gloom narratives. They respond better to an explanatory tone with solutions and clear calls to action that can cut through confusion and fear. And we also learned we can be more effective communicating conservation messages when they are included organically into our exhibit messaging. Another well-known conservation effort at Monterey Bay Aquarium is the rescue and rehabilitation of California's southern sea otters, which may in fact be the most perfect charismatic megafauna on the planet. It's nearly a superpower, and we have never been afraid to resort to using cuteness to sell tickets or conservation. The narrative around our work could simply be Monterey Bay Aquarium helped save otters. But stopping there settles on telling a story of conserving a single species, and it's a missed opportunity to tell the big picture story. We've pivoted to tell a story about our otter work that emphasizes their role as a keystone species that is vital for ecosystem health. Our scientists and otter experts have helped our communications team make that careful pivot in our messaging because we need to tell the big story here, that conserving species can provide a multitude of benefits. And conservation actions can cascade far beyond one single species. One of our more recent communications and advocacy efforts is the fight against ocean plastic pollution. Our work here I see as a model for future conservation efforts because it has specific policy, business, and consumer calls to action. To influence policy, the aquarium planned a campaign of petitions, social media alerts, PSAs, email actions, a direct letter writing campaign to appeal to the governor and other decision makers to support legislation that would ban single-use plastics like straws and bags. To influence consumers, we developed a consistent messaging for our floor staff to use when they were in the aquarium. And we also developed some exhibits like our Ocean Travelers Gallery that features artwork made from reclaimed and recycled plastic in order to educate about the issue and engage directly with our guests. Our work to stop plastic pollution also allowed us, for the first time, to use explicit conservation messaging in our summer advertising campaign, which is pictured here. Working with artists, we created a life-size replica of a blue whale constructed from recycled plastic, and we displayed it in locations across San Francisco and the Bay Area to raise awareness around the issue of plastic pollution and as a way to stay top of mind with our main visiting audience. We did a similar experiential advertising campaign with Seafood Watch after the success with the whale. And we created a Seafood Watch branded food truck in the Bay Area. It was well received and also quite delicious. With the success of both of those campaign-based messages, We then, in 2019, made our entire summer ad campaign based in our conservation messages. At its core, the message was, Monterey Bay Aquarium is helping to protect our ocean. Please join us in this fight. This was a deviation from our traditional advertising approach, which, as I said, highlights the experience of visiting. They were meant to encourage people to think about their choices and join us in our efforts to conserve the ocean. They also reflected calls to action that aligned with our conservation priorities. And of course, each message included a stunning photo of an ocean animal, either an octopus, a penguin, a sea otter, a jelly, as a visual reminder that we are also a conservation organization and an aquarium where you can see these cool animals. This approach helps us to achieve our priorities in conservation and helps us meet our financial goals by driving revenue through ticket sales and aids in our ability to fundraise, which helps to support our conservation. While we've shelved our 2020 summer campaign because we are closed, we do plan to return to conservation-focused messaging as soon as the pandemic has stabilized. For someone with over a decade of experience in conservation communications, it's an exciting time to work for the aquarium. Even though our animals are still the stars of the show, the science, conservation, and calls to action needed to keep them healthy and thriving are the plot. Ultimately, we want to make a personal connection with our audiences and help build their empathy for ocean life to inspire conservation action. Our upcoming deep sea exhibition in 2022 will incorporate this strategy and test the effectiveness of an integrated approach to conservation messaging, where visitors will learn about the animals, the science, and conservation all together. And while we're doing that at the aquarium, conservation messages are also going to be a priority in the many ways that we reach the audiences that can't come here and visit. I want to thank everyone for having me, and I look forward to our lively discussion starting soon.